I'm going to show you how to make an antler plaque in about 10 minutes. Here's all the tools you need. The Sharpie is really nice for writing out against the wood. 1/4 inch to 1/2 inch piece of wood will work just fine. I have better luck with plywood in case you torque on it a little bit. And like 3/8 is really the best thickness that I've used, and texture 111 is awesome. I have a large rasp for filing down the plaster and the edge of the wood, possibly a wire brush, some scissors to cut the felt. The jigsaw works fine. If you have a bandsaw or woodworking equipment, that's great. The plaster, I usually have about 2/3 of a cup to 3/4 of a cup, maybe even a cup at the most. I don't mix it all. I always save some in case I need a little extra, because you can pile the plaster on top of plaster. Some felt, you can go green, red, whatever color you like, and a 1 foot by 1 foot patch will usually do it. Also too, a T50 stapler, a hammer to drive the staples down if necessary and to tap things a little bit. A chisel works good for maybe cleaning some of the stuff off the skull plate itself if you needed to. Be careful there. Pretty easy to hold the horn and stab yourself. And then of course some water to take care of the plaster. Mix the plaster so it's like a watery, creamy peanut butter. And there it is. That's about all the tools you need. I start with a piece of plywood of some kind. Usually 1/8 inch to 1/2 inch is good. 3/8 seems to be the best. I had the best luck with about 3/8. Easiest to sand and stuff. I'll take a Sharpie, set the rack on top of the plywood, and just trace a kind of teardrop shape that I like that will help hold the wood and the horn together, and also hold the horn to the plaque when you're done. So I'll just take a Sharpie and I'll just trace out a shape I like. You can make a pattern if you like first, and then put it on the wood and go from there. A center line is helpful, and even a little center line on your antlers is a good idea as well. Double check everything. Take a saber saw. This is one of my old pieces of junk that I've had for a long time. I don't know how many bazillion of these I've made over time, but I try and saw it out as smooth as I can. And then I can take a file or a rasp or a sander of some kind. If you happen to have like a woodworking sander, that's really handy, and I've got one of those. Something my great uncle had a million years ago, and I just kind of smooth it up and make it even, and just make sure there's no bumps or ridges, and that the teardrop shape is nice and even. I'll drill some holes in the skull plate wherever it will sit good, and I countersink them just a little bit, and then I'll start with a screw through. One of the reasons I use plywood is if you torque on the screws pretty good, a regular piece of wood might split on you. So I countersink them and make them, sink down inside a little bit. Put the screw through, and then on the back side I might take my steel grinder or regular grinder and just take off the excess screw that comes through the back side. Just grind it off flush and center it all. The hammer's pretty handy right here just to get it all so it's sitting nice. This piece of plywood has some paint on it, and the plaster might not stick real good to the latex paint that's dried on there, so I just put a few staples as like rebar. I take about a 1/2 cup to 2/3, 3/4 of a cup of plaster and mix it up a little bit more watery than say peanut butter, so that it's kind of creamy. And I'll just dump it on. I don't fill in underneath necessarily the whole thing, but if some goes under there, it doesn't hurt anything. And I just build it up so it's smooth and round and it looks decent. Get the kind of look you want to it. I try and use the plaster to help cover the edges of the skull plate where I sawed it off, so that it's smooth and it won't show up when you stretch your material over the outside of it. I make this look a little easier than it's going to be probably. I've done it a bazillion times. It's almost like somebody who frosts cake and does it a lot. You'll get the feeling for it. But what I'm trying to do is make it smooth and cover up not only the transition from the wood, but the transition off from the skull plate as well. And just take it and just put it to it and just kind of smooth it as best you can. If you need to add a little bit of water to your knife or to your finger or whatever to help smooth it. Some of the older, this plaster is just a whisker older and it's kicking a little faster than it might normally. So I have to move it right along, but you can kind of force it into the cracks. Make sure you leave a little gap along the edges of the antler burr so that you can have the felt go in underneath it. And I just kind of butter it up and then take a little water on my finger and smooth it some. If you can make it really nice and smooth, it'll save having to do a lot of sanding. And of course, it parts off from whatever tool you're using. If you have a little water on it too, it won't stick to the tool so bad. Now, if you did a bad job or it kicks and you're not done or it didn't come out good, or say you had a spot that was low and you didn't get a chance to fill it, you can mix up some more and add it right to it and leave it a little rough and then just add it to it and fix it. If it didn't come out good at all, you just take a hammer before it really kicks up real hard. Just take a hammer and bash it all and start over. Pretty easy to restart this. It's not like you can't mess with it a few times until you really get what you want. I've seen a couple people do this with Bondo over the top of it, but oh, it's so hard to sand. And it's not as good for you. Like Bondo's benzene, it's not so hot for you. You want to avoid touching it with your skin especially. Before it kicks up and it gets real hard, dry, but it's nice and firm, I'll go through with my rasp and just very gently smooth it out some. You could even take a little sandpaper to it afterwards. I'll take a little water on my hand and just finish smoothing it before it really kicks up hard. The better your job you do, of course, the better it'll come out. So as many details as you see too, that's how the quality will be. Brush off the excess. I'll take the felt and I'll staple it on the top and on the bottom. Then I'll just cut down onto the side right here. I'll come right over it. So I have ample material for the front of the burr and for the back of the burr. Then I'll just very carefully cut out a little half circle, just a little like size of a half a nickel or something. I'll do that and take that piece out of there. And of course, the bigger the antler burr, the more you'll want it to have a little bit bigger a piece. And then I'll start in the center and I'll work my way up the front side of it. I like to do the front bottom corner first. You can see how I cut it a little bit close with that part of the felt there. I like 2 or 3 inches outside of everything, and then you have a little more to work with. I cut that one a little bit close. It's enough, but boy, it's close. My T50 stapler doesn't go down tight, so I just take a hammer and finish driving them down the rest of the way. If they're a little crooked or something, it's not the end of the world. It's just holding the felt. It's going to be in the backside. Nobody's going to see it. You can see how I pulled the top over the bottom, made sure that it wasn't wrinkled, and I pulled it fairly tight. And don't always have to cut on the backside, that little half circle. You don't necessarily have to on the backside. Sometimes you can stretch it. One of the nice things about felt is that it's stretchy, and you can pull it up and make up for some of those extra spots where it's a little snug, or help if you made a hole in the felt and didn't leave yourself quite room enough. Same thing, the felt is real cheap, less than $1 for a square foot of it. So if you had to restart, if you buy a couple, 3 of them, and then you've got a few extras for next time, and you're ready to go in case you made a mistake on your first go around. You can see how I cut down the middle in between the antler burrs. This is the key part, and then just take a small little corner and just round it and make like a half circle. Then it'll fit right around. And I'll check and make sure it goes up the side and I've got enough to fold on the side, and then I'll just pull it around and work my way from the bottom back up the front side. Pulling it snug and getting the wrinkles out as I move up. If you use a piece of leather, this will be a little bit more of a challenge because the leather may want to bunch up some. Whatever material you use for this, it's nice if it's stretchy material, because then you can snug it up. Same thing, I cut this side just a little bit close on the extra material, but it is enough. Now I'll just bring that other side around and wrap it and hide the seam somewhat behind the antler burr a little. And then finish getting all the wrinkles out. And finish driving it down and trim off the excess. One of the things you want to keep in mind is that these staples are kind of sharp, and if they stick up just a little bit or they're crooked, when you come to set the plaque and the horns together, it's sharp and it might scratch a finish on the main part of the plaque, so you want to be careful there. Not drag it around while you're trying to screw the two pieces together, because it will scuff up your plaque. So set it exactly where you think it should go, but don't move it around too far because it'll scratch your plaque. Now this is a part that's tricky, and sometimes a little extra help or an extra pair of hands can help you some. And get these two to come together without moving around too much. Screw it down, leave it a little bit loose, and now I can turn it and line it up. And this needed to shuffle over just a smidge. Divide it up, look it over, see what looks good, and then just go ahead and put in your second one. I drill my holes in my plaque a little bit big, like 1/4 inch holes for the screw, and it gives me a little bit of leeway so I can move it one way or the other. Relatively simple, not super hard to do. If you want to see how to get the antlers ready for the horn plaque, check out our caping video where it shows how to saw them out of the head itself. And we'll see you next time here on Mountain Deer.